Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Cloud Whisperers. We're doing some crazy stuff here today as we start with episode 39, AI Whispering. My name is David Broussard.
And I am Brian Cheatham, and I get to see my ugly mug. I love it.
I know, it's kind of a cool thing. I mean, we've been doing this, doing some YouTubing of our videos in the past, right? But we're actually experimenting this time with actually recording this in what will eventually become a live stream, where you'll actually be able to tune in and watch us at a specific time and date and the like. We'll see how that goes. But you know, this hopefully will help us get our podcast out faster, and we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, it gives visual effect too. I like it.
Well, yeah, I do like the visual effect. I mean, as I was telling Brian, I get to show off my geeky t-shirts, right? So you see, my son gave me this one. It says, "I've got your back," right? He's got the little thing there. I've got a whole closet full of geeky t-shirts and funny t-shirts.
I got to step up my game.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny, and you know, although I probably should have shaved this morning, but what the heck? You know, we'll see how that goes. So, Brian, what have you been up to lately?
So I did a solo acoustic performance probably about 3 weeks ago.
So you're like Brian Cheatham Unplugged, right?
Pretty much.
Okay, cool.
And I took my very dated PA and everything else with me. I mean, that's how long this stuff has been. But it was interesting to actually go through like all of the songs that I've played in a cover band with people over the years, and just realize how many songs I actually knew by myself and I could play on the guitar. And I was like, wow, I can actually play this thing. I was always like the rhythm guitar player, and I'm like, oh man, I just a little bit of practice, I can get through these things. So I did that about 3 weeks ago, and it was
So you were singing and playing at the same time?
Yeah, it was.
All right, so
it was interesting.
So there really isn't an excuse for us to get the "Wasting Away Again" in Online Meeting Hell song actually recorded. I mean, we need to get that done.
At the next show, I'm going to have to do that one, I think. Somebody will ask for that song at some point in the night. You'll hear that and Freebird and something else.
Yeah, that'll be fun for sure.
Yeah. So what about you, David? What have you been up to?
Well, I'm having one of those proud papa moments right now. You know, the school year has started. My daughter graduated from St. Mary's back in May, got her teaching certificate done, got an English as a second language certificate done as well. And she got herself a job at a high school in San Antonio, which is not too far from where we live. That's she is teaching primarily English 3, so juniors, but she's got a couple of sections of English 2, right, which is sophomores. And so she is teaching them, and we helped her set up her classroom, and you know, bought her a bunch of stuff and everything like that. And it's just been a lot of fun for her to go ahead and do this stuff. So I've been really excited about you know, all of this stuff. So
yeah, and that was quick too. I mean, it's like she just graduated,
you
right?
know, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you're kind of like, we were really nervous because you're like, we really need you to get a job, you know, and stuff like that. And it was just really, it was scary because, you know, we were like thinking, if you don't get a job soon, then you may not have a job until the next school year. Cause you know, pretty much if you're not starting the school year, it's not like a regular job that you can just start anytime. Right. This is one of those things that you've got to start immediately kind of thing. So
yeah, you don't really start the middle of the year. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But in the end, you know, she did get started. She has really been enjoying herself.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so we're just really excited about it.
Yeah.
So
it's got to feel good, you know, as a parent, something like that, you know, especially when you see your child happy, right, and what they're doing. That's just, to me, when they find their thing and when they're doing their thing, it's just, oh man, just
it is
warms the
absolutely
heart.
Amazing.
Warms
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
heart.
So today, I thought that we would take a discussion around some of the AI tools. That's why we're calling this AI whispering. A couple of the AI tools that Microsoft has. One of them used to be called Form Recognizer. It is now called Azure AI Document Intelligence. And the other one is something that we've talked about in the past in an episode we had called The Syntex Way,
Yeah.
was Microsoft Syntex. Now, just real at a high level, to make sure you understand what we're talking about here. These are two tools that are using AI to help you process documents inside of your environment. There are some big differences between the two of them. But in the end, our goal is to use cognitive services, right? Artificial intelligence, machine learning, all those kinds of things, to
Yeah.
extract information from documents and make decisions about those documents, right? And so I thought we kind of go over what are the two different tools and how do they, which one should you use and when is really the discussion, and then we'll end up with a little bit of just talk about licensing and how the licensing works with these things. Make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. So let me start by very quickly at a high level explaining what is Azure AI Document Intelligence and what is Microsoft Syntex. So we'll start with Azure AI Document Intelligence. So Azure AI Document Intelligence, like I said, used to be called Form Recognizer, is designed to take documents, primarily PDFs, right? The idea is that you've got a bunch of documents that have been maybe scanned in, for example, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to hand them to one or more models that are created inside of the studio, the Azure AI Document Intelligence Studio, okay,
Yeah.
which is built inside of Azure, right? And once you're inside of there, you can actually do a pretty good variety of things. First of all, I can extract all of the information out of that document. And by the way, I can do things like OCRing text, right? So if it's
Right.
got like handwritten text, I can actually take that handwritten text and turn it into actual text. And what it'll give you back is basically all of the text that's in the document, broken out by page, by paragraph. It'll take tables and extract them as tables and define them for you. So it'll do a lot of really cool things. And Microsoft has built a series of pre-built models to do things like take a look at a receipt, right? And extract from a receipt the date and time, the amount,
Yeah.
the tip, the name of the restaurant, that kind of stuff.
Office lens. Yeah.
Invoices. Yeah, some of the stuff they used to do in Office Lens, but now it's actually even more powerful because I can
Yeah.
take that picture, right, and I can extract the text around it, okay, which is
Yeah.
actually
That's
really
great.
powerful. Okay.
Yeah.
And things like identity documents, it'll scan things like passports and driver's licenses and extract information, right? Business cards. I mean, there was a cool feature. I was Office Lens did business cards where it would actually try
Yeah.
to extract from the
Yeah.
business card the name and the phone number, the email. Well, obviously, they're getting better around that. And one of the other cool things that you can do inside of this is you can actually create custom extraction models and custom classification models. So you can actually go into here and you can say, hey, I really want to extract certain like key value pairs, right? So here's
Yeah.
a field and here's its value, which is pretty powerful. Or what I've been using it for with one project is I've got a half a dozen types of document and I don't know what type they are. Right. So what
Right.
I can do is I can use what's called a custom classification model to have the form recognizer look at a document, right, and say, oh, this is an invoice. Oh, this is a statement of work. Oh, this is a status report, right?
Yeah.
Which is really pretty cool, right? And you do that simply by giving it examples of documents, right, and telling it this is this type of document. This is
Yeah.
this type of document.
This is what this looks
And
like. Yeah.
and it exactly now. There's a lot about that sounds very similar to Microsoft Syntex. Now, when we talked about Syntex before, what does Microsoft Syntex do? Well, Microsoft Syntex is designed to let you take documents that are put into a document library, right? And then once those documents are in there, a Syntex model will process those documents and extract metadata from that document. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that's pretty powerful. So, for example, if I had an invoice, okay, it'll take an invoice and it'll say, ooh, I found the pay to line, and I found the total line, and I found the address line, and I found the invoice date line, and I found the terms area, and I can
Yeah.
extract from that those pieces of information, right? Now, what's cool about Syntex is it then takes that document that's in that library and it adds all those pieces of information as metadata to that document.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about it, is really powerful, because
Very powerful.
one of the worst things is trying to get users to put metadata about a document, right? They just won't do it. So
They just
this
put
is
it
a way
in a
that
folder, right? A folder.
or no, better yet, I can't. How many times have you seen a file name that says client name dash change request dash date dash account executive, right? I mean,
That's in a folder.
and then that's in three folders deep kind of thing, right?
Right.
But people will put metadata on a document in a folder or in the file name, right? But ask them to tag it with that information, and they're like, nope, can't make me.
Yeah.
You just can't make
That's
me do
2
that,
clicks.
right?
Yeah, I can't do those 2
Exactly.
clicks, right? Yeah.
No, can't do that. So Syntex is great at taking a document that's dropped into a library, right? And then extracting that metadata. And you have a number of different ways that you can train Microsoft Syntex to do that.
Yeah.
I can do it by having it look for strings before and after a document, a piece of data, right? So if it's a letter and I don't really know where the stuff's going to show up, I could say, oh, wait, if I look for the phrase total amount due, and what I could see before and after, right? I can start to grab, and then I know it's numbers, right?
Yeah.
Then there's a lot of tools that say, oh, like it'll recognize a date, whether it's in month dash day dash year, or whether it says September 5th, 2023 or something like that. It can, the intelligence can figure that stuff out for you, which can make the extraction of that data pretty straightforward and easy, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool, but why would you use one and not the other? And so here's what it boils down to: a couple of things. So first of all, Microsoft Syntex only works in Microsoft 365, right? Now, by the way, there's a lot of other features of Microsoft Syntex we haven't talked about. Things like backup and recovery is part of that now, right? So you can actually do granular level backups in Syntex, and there's document creation that you can do with Microsoft Syntex. That's for another podcast, right? We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
But when we're just talking about this data extraction, right? The issue is I can only attach one Syntex model to a given document library,
Okay.
right?
That makes sense.
So you can start to see what the problem is, right? Well, what if I've got invoices and I've got I don't know. I'm trying to think of some other different types of I could have invoices, I could have bills, I could have statements of work, I could have, employee HR documents and all, and I want to process all these with Syntex, right? Great, but I got to have a different library for each one.
Yeah.
And if I don't know what that is, okay, then somebody's got to decide where those documents are going. And that either needs to be a human, right? Or we have to automate it somehow.
Right.
And so what we were doing with an organization was we were saying, hey, let's use a custom classification model in Azure AI Document Intelligence, right? To first say, hey, I drop all these documents into a library and it'll tell me, oh, this is a statement of work. Oh, this is a business card. Oh, this is an invoice, right? This is a receipt. And then we use, once it tells us what it is, we move it to the appropriate library where our Syntex model can then extract and classify that information. Right.
And that library is protected
so,
by Azure Information Protection or whatever. Right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, well, first of all, it's protected by inherent SharePoint security, right? So that library is designed just to hold documents, and I can control who has access to it, right? Now, cool things that Microsoft Syntex can do is I can have, in addition to extracting metadata, right? I can also have it apply a retention and a sensitivity label based on the model. So if I see a document and I go, oh, this is a W-2 form, right? Let's say I want to
Yeah.
slap a sensitivity label on here that encrypts that document and means that only certain people can look at it,
Yeah.
right? Like the accounting
Right.
department. Okay.
Yeah.
If
stuff.
this is a exactly, so that's a cool thing we can do. And I can also say, oh look, this document is a W-2. I want to slap a 7-year deletion policy on this so that I only keep this for 7 years, right?
Yep.
So all of that is powerful. And then the other thing that Syntex does is it has events in Power Automate, right? So
Yeah.
once the document processing is completed, I can fire off an event and say, now that this document has been processed, I know what it is and I've got all my metadata and it's got the appropriate labels assigned to it.
Yeah.
Now I could move it someplace, like to its permanent
Approval
repository.
workflow or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I can do anything I could think of inside of Power Automate. I can now process with that. Okay. So that's cool, right? So what about this Azure AI Document Intelligence? Well, the big difference, if remember everything I've described in Syntex, right, doesn't require writing any code. I build my model through SharePoint. I deploy it to a SharePoint library. It's fired off automatically in a SharePoint library. And there's literally nothing that I have to do at that point in time, right? No code is written. Now, I can do Power Automate, which is kind of like code, right? I mean, it's a low code, no code solution. But it's not, I'm not whipping out C#. I'm not writing Python, right? I'm not writing PowerShell, right? But it has limitations. Now, Azure AI Document Intelligence is very different because it is, while I can configure all this stuff and there's a lot of out of the box stuff, it doesn't do anything by itself. For me to actually use it, right, I actually have to go out and write code to call the document intelligence models. Okay. Now, that can be done from Power Automate, right? It can be done from PowerShell. It can be done from Python. It can be done from C#, whatever you want to do. But I have to write code to actually do it at that point.
To engage it.
Okay.
Yeah.
To engage it. So as an example, in the model we were talking about earlier, right, we drop a document into a library and I don't know what kind of document it is. Once it's gotten in there, we run a Power Automate flow. And that Power Automate flow, now because the custom classifier is new, they don't have a Power Automate action like they do for some of the pre-built ones. So we have to consume a web service call. So we do an HTTP call, right? Send it the document. Then we have to wait for it to process. And then we have to keep every minute going back and checking. Are you done yet? Can I have the results? And once it says, yeah, I've got the results, I say, give me the results. And now it comes back and gives us a JSON object, right? That says, I think this is an SOW. I think this is a business card. I think this is an invoice. Then our Power Automate flow basically says, oh, well, if it's an invoice, move it to this library where Syntex can, exactly. Then Syntex can fire off and do all of its processing. So you work them in sequence. They work well together. It's really cool because, once again, we did it with Power Automate, not really any code going on there, right? A little bit more. It's a little bit more complex. And frankly, if you run up against the limits of what you can do with Microsoft Syntex, Azure AI Document Intelligence can give you a lot more control, but you're having to do the actual work. It'll do a lot of the same machine learning behind the scenes of doing the extraction, right? But now you've got to make decisions. You've got to write handlers. You've got to do that stuff. And by the way, could that be Python code? Sure. Could it be C# code? Sure. Could PowerShell or an Azure function or a logic app or Power Automate? Yeah, it could be all of those things, right?
Right.
Power Automate, we discovered, we kind of ran into some of the limits of how complex this is going to get. So we did kind of have to, at one point, have to step back and say, yeah, that's not going to work. Okay. But we were able to accomplish an awful lot of things. Right.
Yeah.
So lastly, let me tell you what it costs. right? Because Microsoft changed their licensing this fiscal year on Microsoft Syntex. Before, you paid $5 a user per month to get Microsoft Syntex. Okay. And that per user per month allowed you to process as many documents as you wanted to. Okay. Now, you did have to buy some AI Builder credits under certain circumstances, right? But
Right.
Microsoft basically was saying, hey, you're paying on a per user per month consumption basis, right? Well, Microsoft discovered that that wasn't working out very well for them, as it often does. And they decided instead to go ahead and move to a consumption-based license. Okay.
Yeah.
Azure AI Document Intelligence is already a consumption-based license, and depending upon the type of model you're using, it can be anywhere from 5 cents per page to 10 cents per page, right? And Syntex is usually 5 cents per page. Now, that's per page. I take a 10-page document, right, and throw it into Microsoft Syntex, that's 50 cents, right? I take a 10-page document and I throw it into Azure AI Document Intelligence, and I use certain models that cost at 10 cents per page, right? That was $1. If I put it against the 5 cent, it cost me 50 cents, right? So
Yeah.
in the model that we built for our customer, right, it's actually going to cost them basically 10 cents a page, 5 cents to do the custom classification model, and then 5 cents to do the syntax model.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to cost them 10 cents per page to get most of this done. So you have to not only think about how many documents you're processing, but also how many pages you're processing inside that documentation. And that also, by the way, means that you might end up making the decision to just stick with, something else that's getting your documents into Microsoft Syntex, or doing more coding in document intelligence to do the work you were doing in Microsoft Syntex. You could do that, but now you're writing the code to extract those key value pairs and assign them to then doing client-side object model to update the documents in SharePoint and stuff like that. So your mileage is going to vary.
Yeah. Now, so is it the prereq for it? Is it a SharePoint license, like SharePoint plan to get to Syntex or whatever? I mean, I'm sure on the AI document intelligence it's different, right? But
it used to be that you had to buy a license for it, right? And my understanding now is that everybody has access to Syntex. Okay, I think may have to turn it on inside of the admin. I haven't looked because it was already done before. But anyway, what I would say is that in that situation, once you have an E level license or a G level license, right, you'll be able to go out and access the features of Syntex. Now you can control this as an admin of who can go out and create models and where they get deployed and stuff like that. But now, once you've got a document library with a model on top of it, every document that gets dropped in there is going to get processed 5 cents a page for each of the documents, and then it'll do whatever the Syntex model is designed to do. Okay.
Yeah, very interesting.
And then Microsoft bills you on a monthly basis, right? So you need to be careful with that stuff.
Yep, and Copilot's coming along too, so who knows?
Oh, that'll only be $30 a user a month, so very cheap. Just what you need to do is just open up an account with Microsoft, and they just take all your money, right? Yeah. Every month they just take all your money, and everybody will be happy, right?
Yeah, we need two forms of payment, please. Just in case the first one doesn't work.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I could see that happening. But in the end, these things are adding they can add some significant value to your organization.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. So the idea that I could go out and not have to have somebody screening an inbox for documents, and then or not having to write code to look at a document, open it up, convert it, do OCR, do all these things, which by the way, you can do all this stuff yourself manually. Yeah. Right? You can, but you're doing the work. What Microsoft is saying is, hey, we've commoditized this now. And if you pay us and by the way, once you start doing, you get volume discounts on this stuff, right? You get big enough and Microsoft starts giving you discounts on how this stuff costs. Okay. Yeah.
But having all that stuff processed automatically, you're getting it labeled the right way from a retention perspective. You're getting labeled from a sensitivity perspective. I mean, there's all kinds of benefits there. intangible benefits,
Oh,
whatever you
and
want to call them.
just not well, but remember, if you ask a person to do this, right, then you're injecting uncertainty and potential error. People make errors. So I'm not saying the computer doesn't, right?
Sure.
But the idea is that you can process thousands of documents now a day for for less than it would cost you to have a human do it, both in
Yep.
time and in your cost of that person, and your error rate should be a lot lower. Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So that's Azure AI Document Intelligence and Microsoft Syntex in a nutshell, and we'll dive more deeply into these things in the future.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
You're speaking
it
my
is cool
my
stuff.
language, automation. You're speaking my language. So.
Well, it is. That's exactly what we want to do, is automate things. But Brian, we have come to that part of our podcast once again. You know what that time is again, right?
It's time for something last thing, I think. One last thing or many last
Yes,
things?
it's time for one. No, not many last things. Just one last thing. Okay. And it being us recording this now, at the end of August, that means, and here's where I wish I had, a music thing to go dun 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 dun. dun the old Monday Night Football theme, right? Because it is NFL season now, and I have now. I was going to say I've watched 2 Cowboys preseason games. I would say it's probably more correct that I have suffered through 2 Cowboys preseason games, because the Cowboys are not of the opinion that they should play any of their starters in these games, which makes the watching of these things, you have no idea if the team is going to be any good or not. And you're guaranteed that the first couple of games of the season are going to be rusty as all get out. But
you get to see Deuce.
It is so nice. Oh, now I'll tell you, he is fascinating. Deuce Vaughn he's just been so much fun to watch, because, sometimes he gets hit and he just goes down because he's a little bit. This guy, by the way, just to let you know, this guy is within a hair's breadth of the size of my wife. Okay. He's short. He's like less than an inch taller than my wife. Okay. And I'm just like, that's what my wife would look like if she was out wearing those shoulder pads on the field and stuff like that. But I watched him a couple of times, and I was like, his nickname should be Pinball, because he's just like boing 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 boing, and he like disappears behind a lineman, and you're like, where'd he go? And then suddenly he emerges someplace else, and you're just like, how did that happen? It's so amazing. So, watching Cooper Rush, watching Greer, you're just kind of like, I hope Dak doesn't get hurt. And of course, Cooper, we're not seeing any of the top receivers. Yeah. Oh no, Cooper did great last year, and frankly, he's done really fine in the preseason. Except that you look at him like this one of the games, he was like 8 of 10 for like 70 yards, and you're like, okay. I mean, it's like 7 yards per attempt, less than 10 yards per. I mean, we're not really pushing the ball down the field, but that's the whole. That's this whole. I think they said they're calling this the Gulf Coast offense instead of the West Coast offense. So McCarthy was the West Coast offense guy, and they're calling it Gulf Coast offense. So I'm like, take what they give you, make your reads quick, throw the ball short, maybe you break something. It's been interesting. The tight ends have looked good, right?
Yeah, they have.
The Turpin and Tolbert look like they've got the 5 and the 4 pretty locked down. So I think the wide receiving core is going to be good. They signed their guard, not Frederick. I can never. I always want to call him Travis Frederick, and that was the center. I can't remember his name right now, but he's like the best guard in football. But they went ahead and signed him, so he's back in camp. And so hopefully, if the offensive line can be consistent, they look like they might have a good running game to go with a good passing game. The defense, I mean, even the second stringers looked dominant at times in the preseason, and you're just kind of like, this could be amazing. So,
and you got Diggs and Parsons too. So those 2 guys on the defensive side.
Parsons has been great, and Diggs has been great, and they got Stephen Gilmore over
Yeah.
there as well now to go with Diggs. And the only thing that's been sad is I forget the name of the linebacker who got hurt. That was out of Texas, and he's going to be he blew his ACL out, and he's going to be gone. I think for the whole season now,
Yeah.
which is a shame.
Few injuries. Yeah.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
which is why they don't play the starters in the preseason. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, but man, it's well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But
At least like
you know,
one
I
set of downs. I mean, just
well,
put them in there for like
yeah.
one
I
set
mean,
of downs at least. I mean,
it's not like it used to be, but I get it. I understand it. We'll survive.
yeah.
Well, Brian, I mean, I'm going to control my expectations, right? But I don't want people to control their expectations for this podcast, because one of the cool
Correct.
things about our podcast now is that we are now, this will be up on YouTube. Maybe you've seen it there. I'll be ripping the audio out and posting it in our normal places, but you can follow us on YouTube, and there's the URL, or you can just go to YouTube and look for the Cloud Whisperers. I haven't figured out yet how to change the channel name to something that actually isn't like a bunch of upper and lower case characters and numbers, but when I do, we'll make that a lot easier.
I think we need some
Obviously, you can
subscribers
also.
first.
Well, yes, we do. And then you can also follow us on podcasts, Apple Podcasts. You can just go to Apple Podcasts and look for the Cloud Whisperers. We've been there all along. It's one of the first places we went. You can also follow us on Spotify, right? Just go to Spotify and look for the Cloud Whisperers, and you will find us there. And obviously, we're also on Google Podcasts as well. There's a hideously disgusting URL that you're probably not going to want to type in. But honestly, all you got to do is use your favorite podcast app, search for the Cloud Whisperers. You will find us, and subscribe. Do all those things. Reach out to us. We are, if you look, I am David, he is Brian, at dbrusa on Twitter, Brian at Get Cloud Savvy with 2 V's, right?
2 V's.
Which, why is it just not like a W then? Right? No, that's a W, not a double V, right? Although, honestly, a W looks like 2 V's, right? As opposed to 2 U's, because it's got little vertexes at the bottom instead of a. See, now we're delving off into this should be a whole nother podcast topic. We'll talk one last thing about, why is W 2 V's next to each other and not 2 U's next to each other? But
Many last things, right? Many last things.
Many last things. Brian, thank you very much to our 3 listeners out there. Thank you very much. We appreciate everything that you do. And until next time, we will bid you adieu.